Welcome back to the Volunteer Build Series here on Yankee Auto Systems. What we're going to be focusing on today is suspension. What we are trying to do with the suspension today is to get it so that the springs do not come completely unloaded when the suspension is at full droop. Currently, with the vehicle up on jack stands, the vehicle is at full droop and the springs probably have 2 to 3 inches worth of travel. What I'm going to try and do is to get those springs to sit up higher so that they come just a tad unloaded when the suspension is at full droop. Hopefully that's going to make the car a little bit more streetable. Let's go ahead and jump into that now. Okay, so luckily the front suspension was easy to adjust. I just had to turn that lock nut at the bottom to change where the spring perch is, and I feel like now I do have a spring height that I'm more comfortable with, the 10-inch height. It does have just a little bit of play in it, which is okay by me. That's with full droop on the suspension. There's no weight on the suspension. So if I've got just a little bit of play, hopefully what will happen is when that comes under load, that'll be taken up and I will have a higher ride height, but still have some adjustability for the system to come fully unloaded but not drop drastically. And I don't think that'll ever happen on the road, but I just wanted to make sure that I've got a good amount of that clearance taken up, because there probably was 1.5 inches to 2 inches worth of travel once the spring came fully unloaded, where it could just slap around if it wanted to. Wasn't okay with me. But I did go ahead and check the rear suspension. As far as the rear suspension, the springs are already taken up with all of the slack. There is no slack in those springs. So I didn't check the height on them. I'm not terribly concerned with that at the very present moment. The next thing I'm going to focus on is back up on the front suspension. Now that I do have the clearance from this spring and this turnstile being out of the way, I do still have a clearance issue with the track rod here. Now, as far as I can tell, there doesn't seem to be any damage to the steering rack or where it sits. I don't think you can necessarily adjust that. There might be a slot underneath that you can get that track rod to push out a little more. That may give me the clearance. I'm going to check that. But additionally, what I can see is that this spring mount here, where the top of the strut actually is, does have spacer in it. All of the mounts have spacers in them. That's a common thing. So what it's done is this shock is pushed out towards this way at the top. I want to see if I can possibly get that pulled in a little bit by changing where the spacers are and how they actually seat. There's plenty of them to go around. There's 2 spacers there, 2 spacers there, a spacer there, 2 spacers there as well. So I do have my options as far as how I can space everything and trying to get that to sit a little better to gain clearance, because I do think that the lock-to-lock clearance issues is something that I'm going to need to focus on. I'm going to go ahead and hop underneath of the car to see if that steering rack is slotted, to see if it can move forward just a touch to try and gain me the clearance, and if not, we'll just play the spacer swippy swappy game. Yeah. So I did try and swap those spacers around to see if that was going to give me the clearance that I needed and place the strut in a different position. It did put the strut a little more straight up and down, which I am happier about. However, it did not take care of my clearance issue with the tie rod or the track rod. So it is still hitting on the bottom of the housing there. I have a couple of different options as far as what I could do. I could try and dent that housing to get the clearance that I need, because this is the ride height that I'm going to want it to be at. These sleeves are replaceable. You can get new ones. The other thing that I could try to do is to actually shorten this rod here so that the strut will sit further in at the bottom. I don't necessarily want to do that because that's going to be cutting into the control arm. I don't know if I can make a clean cut. I don't know if I'll take too much or too little. The option of denting this is possibly the best option. Or what I could try and do, which is what I'm going to try and do now, is to try and adjust the upper A-arm control arm to see if that's going to help push the bottom of the arm out and give me the clearance that I need. I really don't think that that's necessarily going to work though, because here's the thing. If the strut's not pulled further back on it, it's still going to sit in the same position. The only thing that's going to change is the way that it's pitched. And unless I pitch it really, really hard, I don't think I'm going to gain the clearance that I need. But I think I know why I don't have the same clearance on this car as I did on the Petty Chevy car. The Petty Chevy car has an updated spindle to it. The bottom of the spindle does have an adapter for a spindle arm that is slotted. You can change where that tie rod is actually sitting and either gain clearances or change your steering angle, I'm sure. This car, I think, is older than Petty Chevy. This seems to have just a triangulated spindle. It seems to work fine. I don't see any issues with it other than the clearance, and I don't think that they were expecting you to go full right-hand lock. This was definitely a dirt car, which is evident by the mesh screen here. So I don't think turning right at all was at all in their wheelhouse, anything that they were concerned about. I think this car did a lot of left-hand turns just like the other car. I haven't seen or know of a dirt track that was more than an oval or a circle track. So I'm going to try and dive into some of these adjustments on the alignment, see if that can gain me a little bit more clearances. One issue that I do have with the alignment currently is I do not like how this A-arm is set up currently. It might be hard to see. I'm trying to be as 90 degree to the car as I can. You can slightly see that the suspension rod does pitch over this way a little bit more. So it's not necessarily a straight 90 degree angle. I would assume that that is because they want to keep space away from this spring so that they don't have clearance issues there. I still need to go ahead and swap these spacers back just so I know where they are and that they're in the right place. But the other thing I have considered is taking this larger spacer that was from the strut top here and putting that on the back side here so that it will change the pitch, which will need me to adjust this arm as well. I think that's what I'm going to do first to try and get this A-arm space a little more 90 degrees so that it's not necessarily the ball joint is behind the A-arm pickup. I'd much rather prefer if it was straight in line. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's what I'm going to do. made my adjustments to the right front suspension. I think I have it set the way that I'm going to have it set. It did not take care of my issue of clearance with the tie rod to the lower portion of the strut, but I'm just going to show you what I have set up. So what I have is, I think that's a 3/4 inch spacer between the A-arm and the heim joint, and then I believe it's a 1/4 inch spacer, and then the bolt driven through. I've got the smallest, or again I'm guessing 1/4 inch spacer on the front of the strut bolt that goes to the top of the strut. There is no spacer down at the bottom of the strut, and that's fine. The last thing I did was to lengthen this upper arm here so that could give me the angle for the A-arm that I was looking for. Now currently it is set a little further forward, but I was also trying to pay attention to the caster on the front, or on this top suspension ball joint. So the caster right now looks as if it is mostly neutral, but I'm going to adjust that later and worry about that later when I get to the actual alignments. As of right now, I'm only worried about this clearance issue. What I'm going to do is head over to the left side of the car and try and emulate the same thing that I have on the right side of the car here, just so that at least side to side the car is set up in a similar fashion, so that if I have any issues, I know that, you know, it's not because one side is set differently than the other. So let's go ahead and time lapse on the other side.
And on that note, we're going to end the episode here. I want to thank everybody for watching so far. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel New Yankee Auto Systems, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/New Yankee Auto. Till the next time, see you on the next one.